Hi guys, I am Brittany Shaw, and today I'm going to show you and go over my action research project with you. The title of my research project is Supporting Transient Students by Giving Them Strategies to Enhance Student Achievement and School Connections. Just to give you a little introduction about myself, I am a second grade teacher at New Middleton Elementary School in Smith County. I'm currently finishing up my 12th year in education. I have teaching experience in Title I, kindergarten, second grade, and third grade. My husband, Adam Shaw, is also completing this program with me. We will be celebrating our 8th wedding anniversary next month on June 14th. We have two sons who we lovingly refer to as the Wild Reds because, well, if you guessed it, they are red-headed. Carter is 4 years old and Campbell is 2 years old. So to say that this year has been a wild ride is an understatement, but we are blessed to be able to complete this program together. This program has taught me to be gritty, and I put that statement in there because one of our videos that we had to do for research talked about instilling grit in our students, and that really stuck with me because I feel like there is no way that I could have completed this program this year without having some grit. So I really enjoyed that video, and that really stuck out to me. I have learned a lot about myself throughout this last year, not only that I'm gritty, but also learned through some of my personality surveys that I would make a great assistant principal. So in the future, I hope to use my degree to become either an instructional coach or an assistant principal. All right, now let's talk about the abstract of my research project. So the purpose of my research project is to identify and track transient students using diagnostic screeners and benchmarks. Now, you may be wondering what a transient student is. A transient student is, you guessed it, a transfer student. But the definition of a transient student is a student who has moved or changed schools 3 different times before entering 3rd grade. Now, we all know that transient students have trouble staying on grade level. So my question is the use of aligned high-quality instructional materials and resources. If we use those along with diagnostic screeners, would this allow us to track any knowledgeable gaps that our students may have? This research project would consist of 5 different phases throughout the school year using second graders at New Middleton Elementary School. Students and parents would participate in a Google Forms survey to identify transient students. Next, the students would be assessed using diagnostic screeners and benchmarks. These screeners would provide the teachers with a list of skill deficits as well as strengths. The teachers would then keep a reflective journal detailing any successes or failures between the testing periods. The purpose of this reflective journal is to document any successful strategies or techniques that might be used to enhance student achievement for transient students. The results of this study have not yet been found or published. All right, so let's talk about the introduction of this action research project. How did I get this idea? During the 2017-2018 school year, our elementary school, which was previously a K-8 school, merged with a neighboring elementary school, which was also a K-8 school. Both schools were experiencing high enrollment numbers and overcrowding due to transient students who were either moving from across the county, out of zone, or were moving from out of county or out of state. Our school was reconstructed into a K-2 elementary school, and our neighboring school became our feeder school, now housing students in grades 3 through 6. As I was looking through the school improvement plan, I observed that there was a significant decline in student achievement from 2017 to 2018. We dropped from 61.1% to 47.1%. This drop was accredited to the acclimation of the 2 schools joining. As the 2 schools joined, we had teachers who had been teaching together their entire careers in the same schools. These teachers were forced to either choose to leave their team and leave their school to go to a new school, or some of them just decided to retire altogether. And we credited the acclimation of the 2 schools joining to that decline. But in 2019, our overall student success began to climb again as the adjustment period wore off. But one area was consistently identified as an area of improvement, and that was literacy. Possible reasons for this drop were a lack of resources and high-quality instructional materials which align with state curriculum standards and best practices across the state and neighboring counties. At this time, there was much that was unknown about best practices we were starting a program called Read to Be Ready. There wasn't a lot of professional development about Read to Be Ready. There wasn't a lot of training. The information that we got was also very contradictory. Because of this, teachers stopped buying in and fidelity went out the window. So we attributed that as a drop. Another possible reason for this drop was the amount of students who were transferring in from either across the county, or out of state. From looking at the data, we know from the resources that transiency affects student achievement. That's a given. But the purpose of this instructional design action, this research study, is to facilitate more engaging activities for transient students, hoping that this will lead to more stability and overall success in student achievement scores. This study will evaluate the data gathered from students who are identified as transient students through student-parent surveys. These students will then be data tracked through diagnostic screeners and benchmarks to determine their placement levels. Teachers will be given access to high-quality instructional materials and resources that align across the county and across the Upper Cumberland District, hopefully across the state of Tennessee. These students will also be given resources to before and after school care to facilitate overall student success and stability. The research goals for this project. Goal number 1 is to investigate and influence the high-quality instructional materials and resources when used on transient students. If these students are given access to an aligned curriculum across the state, across the county, across neighboring counties, would that make a difference to keep them stable in their environment, to keep them stable and engaged in the school connections? Goal number 2, to access the effectiveness of diagnostic screeners on knowledge gaps for transient students. Research has shown that transient students come in behind because they can't keep up with the constant moving. If we had a way to diagnose their level, their deficits, could we pick up where they left off? Would that help us to pick up these knowledge gaps? Possible research questions that I had from this project. How will incorporating the aligned high-quality instructional materials across the county and the state raise achievement levels for transient students? How will the use of these diagnostic screeners improve teaching practices for transient students? And do transient students who attend before and after school care have a greater rate of student success than those who do not attend? My data plan and rationale. What data will be collected and who will collect it? Throughout the course of this study, data will be collected from Ames Web, from iReady diagnostic screeners, and student-parent surveys, as well as the teacher reflective journals. The data will be collected from the classroom teachers and the school literacy leader. Who will participate in this research and where will it take place? This research will be conducted from second grade students at New Middleton Elementary School. All research will take place inside of the classroom and inside of the school. What is the frequency and duration of this data collection? All data will be collected 3 times a year for both iReady and Ames Web. Student-parent surveys will only be collected once at the beginning of the year. The duration of this project will last 1 school year. The idea that I had was to have this project to go in 5 different phases. So even though data is only collected 3 times, that's 3 phases. You're going to have a phase 1 at the beginning of the year. You're going to have a phase 2, which is in between these data periods, where the teachers are going to observe the students and they're going to work on their strategies. They're going to try all these different resources that we have. Phase 3 is going to be the second data collection, the winter benchmark goals. Okay. Phase 4 is going to be the reevaluation of the teacher strategies. What resources have we found that seem to be working and making improvements? What strategies and techniques have we found that hasn't made any progress? Phase 4 would be the reevaluation period again, and then phase 5 would be the final test. The final test would be, what have we learned? What have we concluded from this research? How will this data be disaggregated and analyzed? The student-parent surveys will first be conducted. That will be the first part of the year. In August, When the kids come in, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a Google form. And the parents will submit this Google form. It's very short, very quick, and we'll get immediate response from this. From this survey, the students who have moved at least once since kindergarten will be identified and tracked. Ideally, this plan is for students who have moved 2 to 3 times since kindergarten. Since a transient student is a student who has moved 3 times before entering 3rd grade, we want to get an idea of who these transient students might be. Because again, we're only at 2nd grade and transiency doesn't actually start till 3rd grade. But if we can ideally track the students who have moved twice, then we would be on track for identifying these students. Students will begin the screening process and will be tracked for the duration of the school year using these diagnostic screeners and benchmarks to determine their placement levels and knowledge gaps. Teachers will also use the reflective journal to document any strategies, techniques, or takeaways from this research. Suggested strategies that I have found from my resources would be obviously small group interventions and instruction, which we already do. Before and after school care has been a big suggestion as it creates stability for the students. It gives them grounding to school connections. It helps them to make a deeper school connection. Other suggestions that we have were access to a social worker or a school counselor. Now, most schools have a school counselor on their grounds, on their campus. However, in small rural areas, we have to share a counselor. So this would be an idea that we would have if we had a high number of transient students in one area, we might want to assign a counselor to that school. Potential findings from this research. From this research, I believe that there are many possible outcomes. First, I anticipate that we will find a correlation between transiency and students who are below or well below grade level. I anticipate that identifying these transient students and using various forms of data such as your screeners and your diagnostics and your surveys, tracking them throughout the year will help us to move these students 1 grade level higher. That's the goal. The ultimate goal is to be on grade level after phase 5 of this research plan. I anticipate that transient students who attend before and after school care will make stronger school connections to their peers and their teachers. They will have more stability and they will achieve greater academic success than the transient students who do not attend. I also anticipate that aligning a curriculum across neighboring counties and across the middle part of the state, hopefully eventually the entire state, would positively impact transient students. Now, this is why we have Common Core standards, because it does align. But do these standards represent the same in the curriculum? Is the curriculum going at the same pace? So having an aligned curriculum across the state would help transient students to pick up exactly where they left off. The significance of this research would greatly benefit each of the following stakeholders. For students, this research would be significant because it would help us to identify specific knowledge gaps, as well as strategies that we could use to remedy these gaps. For the teachers, it would be significant because it would provide us with a specific list of skill deficits as well as their strengths. It would help us to determine a grade level placement score so that we could have an ability to close these learning gaps. It would also be beneficial to subject and content area. Because this project is geared towards increasing literacy scores, I also anticipate that we would see gains in other subjects because literacy is incorporated in all of our subjects. Every subject you have to read. You have to read math problems. You have to read science text. You have to read social studies. If we can make gains in literacy, then I anticipate that we will make gains in all other subjects. This research would benefit administrators because it would impact the data of our schools. It could also lead to changes in the way that we do PLCs. If we find from the teacher journals that teachers are having success with a technique or a strategy while others are still struggling and the students are not making gains, then we can share these in our PLCs and it can make them more beneficial. This might even also change how we address professional development. If we can have success with this research project, we could even form professional development geared toward transient students. Furthermore, it could even impact the type of curriculum that we adopt in the future. If we have curriculum that is aligned across the Upper Cumberland and we see success with this, then this is something that we want to continue on. We want to continue to have aligned curriculums across the state. This research could have great significance and benefit our overall school community. It could change how our school community operates. We can even offer more opportunities to students who are identified as transient, and we can provide them with a greater chance of success given the enhancement of the strategies that we have. Question and answer session. So these are some questions. Do you have questions about this research project that I have presented? If you had any changes, what are some suggestions that you might add to this research project? How could we make this research project better? Do you feel that identifying and data tracking transient students would lead to stronger school connections and overall student achievement gains? Ideally, I have another question that I would like to add to this. This project would only last a year, but I think to see the real benefits of this project, we could extend this project. Since transiency goes through 3rd grade, it would be interesting to see if we tracked these students from kindergarten all the way to 3rd grade, and we tracked how many times that they moved. That would give us a better idea of transiency and what we could really do to help these students. These are some resources that I have used throughout my project, and some more resources. All right, guys, that concludes my action research project. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me. Thank you.